Welcome, welcome to my GatherHood community. I am so happy to have you here. This is your weekly gathering place for all things faith, fellowship, and purpose. I'm your host, Hannah, and also the founder of GatherHood. And I am so excited to have you all here. This is a very, very special episode because we have one of my closest people. Her name is also Hannah. And Hannah's going to be walking us through her faith journey. She has quite the journey, going from college, which is from where we met back almost 10 years ago, 15 years ago when we met freshman year, and we've stayed in touch, and she just has an amazing journey to share with us, and I'm so glad that she's going to be on our podcast. So thank you, Hannah.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you. All right, so we'll just hop right in. We're going to start the podcast by talking about our feelings, Han, and we do this every episode. And we're going to pretty much just kind of say where we're at today. Just put yourself, based on one word, describe where you're at. So if you'd like, I can go first. You can kind of see how it's done, and then I'll hand it over to you. Where I'm at today, I would say I'm really excited. I truly am. I feel like it's cold here in Colorado. It's like the polar vortex. I feel like it's cold everywhere in the country, and I'm excited about that. I'm excited about this interview. I'm excited about 2025 is off to a pretty good start. So I'm just feeling pumped. Okay, Han, your turn.
I love it. So today is like a kind of like an out of whack day. I don't like the weather here. So I'm in the Outer Banks in North Carolina. The weather here is just like super out of whack. And like I had like this plan in my mind of how the day was going to go. And like I was going to go to church and then I was going to surf. And it was going to be like, I could like, just because surfing this time of year doesn't happen very often. And the weather didn't cooperate. And so, it's like super foggy and just like super weird. So like, I don't mean to be a downer, but today I just like feel out of sorts. But generally speaking, so far this year, 2025 has been, it's really been a beautiful, just like start to the new year. Today's just like a weird day, but that's okay. This podcast session is going to bring everything back into order.
I love it. Well, thank you for sharing. We will go ahead and start, Han, with talking about your faith journey. So looking at kind of from waves to worship and your journey to faith and your action sports ministry. I don't know if anyone as an audience or as a listener knows about Fellowship of Christian Athletes. So a little intro into that organization and then kind of your faith journey, high level. Let's start with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I work in full-time ministry for Fellowship of Christian Athletes. And for anyone who's not familiar, like FCA is what it goes by. So FCA has been around since like the 50s. It started like actually Estes Park, Colorado was like the very first like FCA camp that ever was, which is like very special to, as you know, Hannah, like my family, we've spent lots of beautiful time out in Estes Park. And you and I have spent awesome time out in Estes. But so like the mission and vision of FCA is to bring every coach and athlete into a growing relationship with Jesus Christ. So it's a ministry it's like a sports ministry. And traditionally they have existed, and they still do today, within schools. So they're like in middle schools and high schools, but they're also like in college and professional sports through team sports. That's been the main ministry. But over the years, they've seen that sport doesn't just exist within those contexts, that there's a lot of different capacities for sport. And so they branched out for and like into different communities. So now they have like an action sports pillar, which is where I serve, but they also have like FCA outdoors, which is like hunting and fishing and that kind of stuff. So the action sports ministry that I'm a part of, it obviously varies depending on where you live in the country or in the world. But so here where I'm at, the main action sports are surfing and skateboarding. But like if I was in Colorado, it would be like skiing and snowboarding and mountain biking and all that kind of stuff. So that's what I get to do. It's an awesome job. I've been in it since May. It's been a huge period of growth. It's just been like a whirlwind, but it's been like amazing. And as you well know, Hannah, like if you would have told me even like a year ago that I would work in ministry, I'd just be like, no, like you got the wrong Hannah. Like that's not me. This is not what I'm going to be doing. So I grew up in a Christian household, grew up going to church and stuff, but I didn't really understand the difference between like church attendance and having a personal relationship with Jesus. I'm sure a youth pastor has probably said this to me many, many times throughout my life, but I just didn't listen. I don't feel like I really, really, truly gave my life to Christ and like surrendered everything to him literally until like a year ago. Like I knew Jesus and like my relationship with him would like be stronger at some points, and it would be but then I definitely would go back to just like living in the world and doing my own thing, my own way. And so I never truly laid it down to him until like a year ago. And I tell you what, if you give it up to Jesus, he will just be like, okay, sit down, buckle up, because we're going. So yeah, that's been the story for the past year.
I love that. And I prefaced our podcast, this episode, a couple podcasts ago, and I said, like, your middle name could be obedience. Like, truly, I feel like when you felt the calling, you did it. And I think that is very valiant of you. Like, that is amazing that you might have had the calling earlier in your life, but it wasn't as strong as it was.
Right.
And I'm just praise you for the obedience. And I think God is definitely going to bless you in more ways than one because of that. So that's amazing. Talking about that obedience, was there like a defining moment? You said last May is when you stepped into your role as FCA. Was there like a defining moment when you realized like, okay, I'm going to do this? Or was it just over some time you had the pull?
Yeah, so I mean, there was like it was definitely over a period of time, but there was like a few kind of like major points. So like a year and a half ago, maybe even 2 years ago, I like started doing youth ministry. I was at a very, very, very small local church at the time, lived in a very tiny area. And so the church, it had maybe like a few dozen attendees. So it was a very small church, but it was in an area that really needed like a community for youth, and there wasn't really a youth group. And so I took over teaching Sunday school, and then I started like a youth group and a youth program at that church, like as not like an ordained pastor, but just like as a leader and someone who just kind of started it. And got a really great response and turnout from that, and just loved it, and just really felt like, okay, like this is a gifting of mine that I didn't really realize that I had, because I have been in teaching, like I had, been teaching elementary school for a while at that point. But yeah, so God just showed me that like this could be used for teaching his word, which I loved. So that was kind of like where the seeds started to get planted. And so then I was like, okay, like where, like God, like where does this go? What does this mean? Like my view of youth ministry was just like, I feel like what so many people's view of youth ministry is, it's like, okay, you go get ordained as a youth pastor and you work for a church. Just because I didn't know that anything else really existed. So I had to talk to some mentors and be like, okay, like what is this? And, they were really great, and they just really helped me pray through it, and still didn't really have an idea. And so it would have been December of 2023 that I woke up one morning and was just at a challenging place in my life in general, and was having my quiet time in the morning, doing my devotional, and so clearly just felt God put it on my heart, quit your job. There was no there was nothing else. There was no other explanation. There was just quit your job. And I knew that was not for me. That was not like, I had the best teaching job possible. It was a remote teaching job. I was getting paid pretty well by teaching standards. The job was extremely flexible and low key. Again, as far as teaching is concerned, it was like the best teaching job you could have ever asked for. So, I was like, well, what do you mean? Like, I wanted more, I needed more, and I didn't get any more right then. And I know that's not how everyone gets their call into ministry, right? Like there's lots of different ways God puts it on our heart, but that was like the first clear direction, like, okay, quit your job. And so at that moment, I did not quit my job. Some other, big personal things happened in my life during that season. But over the course of the next 6 months, just really just started saying yes to what God had put in front of me. And I knew nothing of FCA. I didn't even know that they existed. I didn't know who they were, but God just put it in my path so clearly. And I just kept saying yes to it bit by bit by bit. And so over the course of the next 6 months, just those little yeses ended up being like, okay, like I met with the people who run FCA out here in my region. They've been trying to hire someone to be the director of action sports in the area for like 10 years. And they had like a couple people that had come close to taking it, but it just fell through and they couldn't figure it out. And so they had just been in prayer for such a long time. And so God just brought me into it. And at first it was going to be like, okay, like keep your day job, keep that steady pay, that health insurance, keep your 401k. But the school year was wrapping up and I just felt super convicted from God. It's like, hey, remember when I told you to quit your job? So yeah, just like was reminded of that. And then I just really did step out in faith, because it's a missionary position. So you have to go out and get funding. So like I don't get a paycheck unless I go and raise my support, which was very scary and very intimidating, but God is just so faithful and has just, supplied and met my needs in ways that I could not have ever possibly imagined.
My goodness. I just love your obedience. And yes, it took you a couple times to truly quit your job, but you did it. And here you are. And
Yeah.
it's crazy how like the benefits and the 401k and the PTO, like all of that matter. It matters so much, especially
It
when you're
does.
like just a career woman, and to take that leap and be like, okay, God, like you say it, I do it. Please,
Yeah.
like, make this worth it. Like, your good plans have to be so good right now. So
Yes.
you did it, and I'm so happy that you did, Han. I really am. I think it's just such a fun fit, such a perfect fit for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So tell us a little bit more about like the unique opportunities that action sports culture provides for sharing the gospel, and specifically ways that traditional settings maybe don't do that.
Yeah, for sure. So like action sports ministry, I was actually having this conversation the other day with someone, because it's like, it's kind of hard to define like what it is. Because there's some people that would classify like, I don't know, maybe like hiking, or like there, I know that there's in some classifications like road biking, and like certain things might get looped in with like action sports, and it could be, again, hard to define. But ultimately, I was like, action sports it's very much like a personality. It's less about like what the actual sport is and more about the personality behind it. Like it's super individualistic. So like that's the big difference between like team sports ministry and action sports ministry, is like in action sports, it's me, myself, and I. Like people tend to gravitate towards that because they are kind of like fringe people. They're kind of anti-establishment. They usually don't like want to participate in the traditional team sports setting. And it's all in your own strength. Like everything that you do, it's all on you. So like if you're skating or surfing or snowboarding or whatever, and you're like trying to do a maneuver, if you're like trying to like reach a new kind of height of your sport, it's on you. So it's very much on your shoulders. But there's so much searching involved in the action sports community. Like if you've ever met like people who surf or people who skateboard or people who are like super into snowboarding and skiing, or even like rock climbing and stuff, like it's a community of searchers. And it's also like, it's a sport where like the next level up is never satisfying. Like we keep craving, it's like a bunch of adrenaline junkies. And like, so you keep craving like that next, at least for me, cause I surf, like that next wave and like that next swell and that next surf trip. Like it's just this literally chasing after the wind. So you're just constantly chasing this thing that you think is going to satisfy you and fulfill you. And then you reach this point and then it's like, oh wait, that's not enough. Like I have to keep going. And I know that there's like, I think it's a TV series now about like the 100-foot wave. And so you literally watch these people like in Portugal at Nazaré, like surfing these 100-foot waves. And you're like, when is it going to be enough? Like, when is it going to be enough? And it never is. So I think that's really, I mean, that's the human existence in general. But I just feel like with action sports ministry, like it's so, it's just really at the forefront of their minds. And it's just like this all consuming kind of sport culture, where you lay everything down to just excel and just get good at the sport. And then it just ends up leaving you empty. If it's not done for the glory of God, it's all completely void.
No pressure.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a lot. My oldest boy, he just got into Ninja Warrior. And so we signed him up for like a ninja class. He goes every Wednesday. He asks every week, when is Wednesday? When is Wednesday coming? And what you were saying, like the next level is like against yourself. Like there's always another level, and it's just working on yourself and like getting better and physical fitness and mental fitness and all of it. And I can see that in him. As you were talking, I was like, wow, that is him. I wonder if he's going to become a surfer or like a mountain biker or a snowboarder or something. Because ninja's like it's in another world. It's crazy town. But it is very much kind of what you were saying, that action sports mindset.
Right.
And so tell us, in action sports, have you experienced like a memorable moment when you saw God work and transform someone's life? I know you're kind of new to this role, but have you seen God at work? And if so, tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, I just think like, and a big part of particularly the surfing aspect, and for me, I just see God work through creation. I feel like for me and for a lot of surfers, I feel like the biggest draw is just like God's use of creation in that. And just, you just get to be away from, like, you can't have access to your phones. You can't have access to technology, but you could have your Apple Watch if like you really wanted to. But it's just like so removed. And so I see God really working, and especially like for all of us, but particularly kids now, to be able to be removed from that, I mean, it really just works in wondrous ways. But yeah, I mean, I definitely I think the beauty of like that action sports community and just like the changes that I see happen in people. And I haven't seen like, at least in my limited experience, like I haven't seen like a major like overnight transformation yet. But just like seeing how the community, because like this community, the age barrier is kind of, it doesn't matter. So like when you're skating or surfing or whatever, like I'm friends with like 15-year-olds, but I'm also friends with like 70-year-olds. So it kind of breaks the barriers of like age. It also like breaks the barriers of status, because it's like it doesn't matter if like you have no money and like all you have is surfing, and it doesn't matter if you're like super wealthy and you surf. So I just see that transformation kind of happen. Like it really humbles people, and it just like forces us to be present in God's creation. So and I think it's just, again, it's just a very disarming community. It's a very disarming place. And I think that God uses, I mean, nature, but also just this sports community to just be like, hey, like, you know, ministry doesn't have to happen within the walls of a church, because there's so many people that will never step foot inside a church. So I think just using creation and just that to be able to connect to people's hearts and to just be able to spread the gospel that way and just kind of have those conversations organically.
I didn't expect you to bring in creation. I love that.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, you are out in the ocean. You're out on the beach, which, my gosh, you living on the beach, I still can't get over how you just live there all the time. It's amazing. But yeah, I didn't expect you to talk about creation. So I love that. That really grounded me as you were speaking. Like you're out there, you don't have your phone, you don't have your computer. It's just you and the Lord and you and the ocean and good people.
Yeah.
So
I mean, and that's like, I mean, and for me, I think like how God has transformed surfing in my life, because I definitely did surfing like for my own glory for most of the time when I've been surfing as an adult. And so there's times where like I'll just be out there and it's like, well, it doesn't even matter like if I catch a wave or not. Like just there's days where it's just so beautiful. And it's just, I mean, and like you'll just be out there and like you'll just like see dolphins. Like you'll just see dolphins. And just like the fact that that's just like a normal occurrence. Or like yesterday, there was like this unbelievable double rainbow, just like from start to finish, uninterrupted rainbow just over the ocean. I mean, it's just so unbelievable. And it's just creation, just like declaring the amazing creator and just the goodness and the glory and the holiness of, and just the majesty of God. So yeah, that's definitely how it speaks to me. And I feel like a lot of surfers, even if they don't know that, like if they're not believers, like that's God communicating to you and that's God chasing after you, and they could still at least appreciate the beauty of it and then just trying to connect that to the creator itself. So it's a really easy kind of like segue into that.
It is. And it's right. Yeah. That's awesome. It is totally God. And he's right there. And all you have to do is look for it.
Yeah.
So, and I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So how about your typical day in your role with FCA? What does it look like as you're building relationship with athletes in the action sports community?
Yeah. And so this is like the question I feel like I have the worst answer for. Like I just have a bad answer, because every time someone asks, as I'm still like navigating it, like I couldn't even tell you. Like there's not like a template for my day, which is actually amazing. And the thing that I'm like growing to love more and more about this job and just the ministry is like my Tuesday and my Saturday don't feel any different. So it's not like, oh, like I need to get like, because I've, been in career for most of my life where it's like the traditional work schedule. And so it's like, you're just trying to get to Friday and then you can enjoy the weekend. And God has really just shown me like there's so much joy to be had just in every day of life and also just in all the seasons. So that's been awesome. But also like the way that I do ministry is different depending on the time of year. So like right now with the wintertime, we do it like we don't have like a Colorado winter, but we do definitely like have a winter season where it's cold, it's windy. Sometimes we get snow. And so you're not like hanging out on the beach, right? So like that's like the natural kind of place for you to do ministry in like the fall and in the summer. But this time of year, I spend a lot of time in coffee shops, which is excellent. I love it. So that's kind of like the place where I like go and meet people is like, hey, like let's go grab a cup of coffee. And that's where a lot of the community happens. But yeah, so it's a lot of meeting people. Like I have like a few Bible studies that I do with some like teenagers or like young adults on a weekly basis. Like I do ministry with the youth at our church. Sometimes I'll take kids surfing and we'll just like hang out and go grab lunch. I meet with a lot of like adults to try and just like do volunteer advancement and just kind of get people familiar with the ministry and just like what we're doing. So it's a lot of relationships, which I love. Like I'm wired very relationally, so I really thrive in that space. And it's a lot of relationships here locally, face to face, but it's also like I've been opened up to a really broad world of action sports ministry throughout the country and throughout the world with just all these ministries that I just didn't even know existed, and just like meeting a bunch of awesome people who are doing the same thing that I'm doing, but just in a different area. So yeah, it's mostly relationship building. And it's just like the best thing ever. So sometimes like there'll be a season like summer and fall, there'll be like a lot of surfing happening, and like a lot of the ministry will be on the beach and in the water. But this time of year, it's more like, we're kind of in our houses, we're kind of keeping to ourselves. So it's more deliberate and intentional and planned out. So it's definitely like a wide variety of ways to do this ministry.
I think that's so cool that you go by the seasons. And that's, again, just like living where you are too. It's so seasonal with like the touristy setting and like the more like townies, the people who live there full time. But I think it's really cool how you can just carve your day and your week based on the season. That is awesome. And I can definitely find some joy in like how Tuesday and Saturday, there's no difference. My life is like that right now too, as the CEO of the home. Like it's so cool because you get the chance to really start fresh, and you see the goodness in that like new day. It's not like you said, it's not getting to Friday to get to Saturday. Like every day is goodness, and you just take it by the horns.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's a great perspective, a really good mindset. Tell me, now that we're talking like outside the box ministry, leading with purpose in action sports, what are some challenges that you face in connecting with that community that we as listeners might not expect?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of hard hearts. And like, again, I speak to the world of surfing more than the other sports just because that's my world. Like I don't skateboard. Like I know lots of skateboards. I know lots of people who do other action sports, but that's just my zone. So there's a lot of hard hearts. It's a lot of like surfing's very territorial. It's like there's this thing called like localism. So it's like, if you're in Hawaii, like you have to be like respectful of like the people at that break, and they're very territorial and they don't like you. Like if you come, like if I'm traveling and I'm visiting there and I go surf there, they don't like you. And so you're just immediately kind of going in with people's disapproval. So you definitely have to like earn your stripes. Like you definitely like have to work to earn people's approval. Which, since I minister here locally, like I'm super blessed that I've been in the surfing community even before ministry for like 6 or 7 years now. So I've been able to develop those relationships. But yeah, there's just like, I would say that there's a lot of just people doing life their own way, and surfing is their God. And I have been there. Like that was my life. Like, the swell, the wind, the waves, surf, like it is your God. It's where you find your value. It's where you find your purpose, which again, it's the human existence, just like insert whatever it is that's your idol, that's your God. But yeah, and I think just like transitioning people from like, let's stop worshiping like the created waves and like worship the creator of the waves. And we get a lot of our value and our purpose from how well we surf and like how much people praise our surfing. So yeah, I think that's kind of the biggest challenge, just softening hearts, going into a community that's already very individualistic, territorial, like not necessarily the most friendly bunch. And yeah, like trying just to gain acceptance and then ultimately turn their hearts again away from the created into the creator.
And because this is like a non-traditional space, what advice would you give to someone feeling called to minister in an area like that with those types of people?
Yeah, I mean, I think just being present is the main thing. And I definitely struggle with this myself because I'm not an evangelist. Like that's not my gifting. Like I can't just like go up and just like spit the gospel at someone. Like I just don't have that boldness or confidence, I guess. And again, I'm relationally wired, and I never want people to think that I'm just like trying to get something from them. So like I want to build a relationship and be like, no, like I love you just as you are. I have wonderful things to share with you that, you know, God has shared with me and has changed my life and transformed me. But I just don't ever want it to feel transactional, and I don't ever want it to feel like they're just like, I don't know, just like a number, like that I'm just like trying to just like count the souls that I'm saving. So yeah, I think just being present is a big piece of it, and just being willing to show up, kind of no matter how long it takes, and no matter if it feels fruitful or not, because I think a lot of the time it is going to feel fruitless and you're like, what am I even doing? Like no one has given their life to Christ, and like I feel like I'm failing at this. So yeah, I think just like playing the long game, unless you do have like the gift of evangelism, then like go for it, knock it out of the park. But I think a lot of people yeah, definitely struggle with that. And so just understanding that you could share the gospel just through your presence, just by showing up and just by walking out your faith and living your faith, and just like allowing those conversations to happen naturally instead of kind of like forcing it right out the gate, I guess.
Yeah, and just be a light. Like you as a believer, you are a light and it shows through you. And so like you said, just living it out, walking it out is going to be maybe even more than words to start. So playing that long game, I could see how that would be really good advice. So thank you for sharing that. I'm sure listeners will appreciate that advice. What is your vision for the future of your ministry in the Outer Banks?
Oh man, I love it. And I think that's what I get. A deep one. Yeah, but it's like what excites me. And I've definitely like walked through a season because like there's so much to be done. And I know like every person in every facet of ministry, right? Because it's like the harvest is plenty and the workers are few. Like it can be overwhelming, like the sheer need and the volume of it all. And so I've really had to like sit back and be like, okay, God, like there's so much that I can do, and they would all be good things. But if I do everything right now, like I won't last very long in this ministry, and I will get burnt out so fast. So really, again, playing the long game, recognizing that it's a marathon and not a sprint. And even though things are good, like it might not be the right time. So really, just surrendering to God's timing. And yeah, just like leaning on my community, because I've just been super blessed with like a good community of like believers who also surf, or if they don't surf, they understand like the need for surf ministry. So yeah, I think there's so much potential, because like the Outer Banks, like I could just gush on the Outer Banks for like ever. It's so beautiful. Like it's one of the most, like I've been super blessed to travel all over the world, and it is one of the most beautiful, like just raw beauty places. And yeah, so it's just like there's so much that can be done, and there's so much surfing that already happens. It is like the premier surf destination on the East Coast. We've had like there's been swells that have been so huge that professional surfers from Hawaii have flown to surf these waves. So like it really is like a surf mecca specifically for the East Coast. And there's so much ministry that already exists here right now, just kind of like separately. So like there's other surf ministries, and there's also just like this incredible group of surfers who are men who have been in the community for forever. And they really started this kind of trend like 20 years ago. There's a surf film called Noah's Ark that is amazing. It's like surfing, but it's also about all their testimonies and turning to Christ. So all of these things have existed here for so long, but there hasn't really been anything to kind of like bridge the gap between them and bring them all together. And I really feel like that is the direction that things are moving in, to take all these efforts that have been already existing and that have already been super fruitful, and really just bringing them together to all be on the same page and have the same mission and purpose. And so that's kind of like what we're forecasting, like for the spring and summer. We have like some super exciting things that are in the works, to really bring that community together, because there's a huge surfing community, there's a huge community of faith. And it just needs that like next step to like really bring it together. And I think it's just going to be super impactful.
Wow. That is awesome. And I think it takes a village, right? Like you as a solo gal, like you can't do that. It takes a village. It takes Christ's hand. It takes his trust, his grace, all of it. And with all of that, it can totally be done. So such exciting things for you and your ministry coming up. We will definitely get some progress updates from you, Han. I'll be sure to circle back with you and share some goodness that you have to share later in the year.
Absolutely.
So to round out our time together, I would love to learn how the GatherHood community can pray for you, can support you and your ministry. Lay it all out for us.
Absolutely. So I think like, and this rang true like in church today. So I feel like over the past like week, like humility has been a big one. Just because like all of us humans struggle with pride, like whether we like recognize it or not. And I think being in ministry and just like anytime you have a platform, I just feel like it's so easy to like lose sight of why am I doing this and who am I doing this for? And that it's not about me. So I think just humility, and ultimately just like submitting everything to God, right? Like what is my vision? What is my plan? And what is actually from God? And what is he calling me to do? I think those are the two biggest things. And yeah, and just like revival, I think, I mean, every community just like needs that. But yeah, just like a revival in the Outer Banks and just like the surfing community. And I think like the seeds have been planted and things have been going on for many, many years. And I just think that all the pieces are just like kind of starting to come together. And I think, yeah, it'll just be an exciting opportunity.
We can definitely pray for some
Yes.
humility. I think we all need that, right? Like even with me with this platform, like it is all because of God, and I need to keep myself in check with that as well. So thank you for sharing. What is your Insta handle, and is there a website if people want to support you in your ministry? What can we give the listeners to kind of learn more about you and follow along in your journey?
Yeah, absolutely. So my personal Instagram is Hannah M. Cornish. So HANNAH M as in Marie, Cornish, CORNISH. And then my ministry is OBX_FCA Action Sports. Those are the two kind of social media handles. And yeah, so if you guys want to, if you feel led, if you feel called to support the ministry, like financially or through prayer or whatever. So on FCA, I think like if you just go to like FCA and just type in Hannah, and then it's actually under Crews, CREWS. That if you type in that, it should just bring up my donation page. So yeah, but I mean, just keep me in your prayers. I definitely need it.
Yes, we will do that. And I'll leave those in the show notes as well, so people can easily access. Okay, Han. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Before we hop off, I do just want to share, listeners, if you want to hear more about GatherHood and our mission, our vision, our resources, there is, again, a link in the show notes, and you can also access a free digital download of our sisterhood program. So definitely take a look at that if you're interested in learning more about our programs. And I think that's going to be everything we have to share today, Hannah. So thank you so much. I so appreciate it.
Thanks
and again, you are welcome. I will definitely circle back with you and we'll get some progress updates on everything you shared, because I think there's definitely some data and some goodness that we can collect and share with the world. So thank you everybody for listening, and we will talk next Thursday. Thanks all.